Elaine, how do I do it? I just put stop video, rename. Okay.
Poor Tom.
Told you.
So
Don't need to believe me, I've got issues.
Welcome everybody coming into the main room. Thank you for joining us. We have folks still coming in, so we'll take a moment to get settled before we start this conversation. Thank you for joining us this evening. All right. So for those of you who just came in from the waiting room, where everyone's getting settled here, we'll get started in a minute. If you see a familiar face you want to say hi to, now would be a great time to send a warm welcome, a private message through chat. You can practice your chat tool on the right side. You can open if you don't have it open, you can open it, press the button to the left of share screen. All right. Chat should be one of the options available to you. Go ahead and send a warm welcome. And welcome everybody coming in. And if you can't see everybody in your window, there's a right arrow. If you go up to gallery view in the right upper right corner, you can get what I refer to as the Brady Bunch view. And there's an arrow to the left and the right that'll enable you to see everybody. If you want to say hi to anybody, that would be a great time to send a private message. If you just want to put out warm welcomes to everybody in the chat, feel free to do that. We'll get started in 1 minute.
Start video. Yeah, she was actually a trained facilitator.
All right. Okay, folks, we'll get started in 1 more minute. For folks just coming in from the waiting room, I just invited everybody to send some warm welcomes and chat. You can send it to the entire group, or you can private message someone maybe you haven't seen in a while, or maybe someone you just want to say hi to. Feel free to do that right now. All right, it's 7:05. I'm going to get us started here, and just know that as folks come in, we'll slowly be letting them into the session, and we'll be bringing everybody in to join our conversation. I want to say welcome again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dawn, and I will be your facilitator and your moderator tonight. Let me get my screen share going here, just to make sure you're in the right place. Okay. All right. All right, welcome. If your windows disappeared, it's okay. All right. You can see them in your toolbar up at the top right in the 3 dots. You can see your chat button. You can open that up. You can also see the other participants by pressing the participant button, which is also up in the chat bar as well, right? I want to say welcome again. And I think there are a few more people coming in. All right. Okay, thank you everybody for being here with us tonight. I want to make sure that there are folks that are recognized for their part in helping organize this event. I'm gonna bring those folks up in a second. Again, if you just got in here, my name is Dawn. My pronouns are she, they, and I will be your moderator and your facilitator tonight. We're going to have a really engaging next 2 hours talking about some critical issues that will enable us to have more connected, fruitful, and productive conversations with each other around anti-racism, around understanding where we all are coming from in terms of a critical approach to racism. Thank you again. So as I said, for this session, we'll be using a couple different tools in Zoom. I want to make sure you all are familiar with that. So if you don't have your chat open, right, the chat can be found in the 3 dots in your toolbar. Go ahead and open that up. And if you want to see the other people, and if you want to raise your hand during the course of this conversation, right, you can click the participants button, all right, and you can see everybody. I will be turning off chat just for the meantime, right? I promise I'll open up chat again, right, just to make sure that we are focused on the introduction and all of the wonderful things that our hosts will be sharing with us in a moment. Okay. We also have folks here to do translations. So we have a Cantonese translator here. If there's anyone who needs Cantonese translation, please put a comment in the chat and we'll see if we can get that set up for you. Right. Okay, so I think we have a lot of the basic logistics out of the way. So let me bring up our hosts. I'd like to bring up first Tom from the city of Millbrae to say a few words of welcome. Tom, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Dawn. Thank you for also facilitating tonight's meeting. It's great to see so many faces out there on Zoom participating again in our second meeting here at the city of Millbrae with the community on anti-racism. There's so many people to thank that have evolved in this community in a grassroots effort to actually form the ARC, and also all of the volunteerism that went into tonight's meeting. So just there's so many people to recognize, and just want to thank everyone. And on behalf of the city, thank you. As I mentioned, this is the second town hall meeting that's hosted by the city and you, the community. And it's the discussion and continued discussion on cultural inclusiveness and equity here in the city of Millbrae. I think that we've already come a long way. We hope to achieve some real good feedback and direction from the community that we can take and evolve into policy changes to really make a difference to achieve the goal in inclusiveness, anti-racism, and just becoming a stronger community together. So I welcome everyone. And again, thanks to the ARC, all of the co-hosts that are participating this evening, and Dawn, especially to you for your time and energy and effort in making this happen this evening. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Tom. And you heard Tom refer to a group called ARC. So on behalf of ARC, Karen will come up and say a few words. Go ahead, Karen.
First off, thank you everybody for coming, and I wanted to welcome everybody. The ARC actually stands for the Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition, and we recently formed after the killing of George Floyd. As neighbors throughout Millbrae, we felt compelled to come together in solidarity to say that Black Lives Matter too. We have since discussed ways in which we can actively be anti-racist, which we can talk more about what that means today, so that we can create a more welcoming and safe community for all members of our community. As the ARC, we have a shared goal to stop racism of any kind, with an ultimate goal of addressing racial inequality that persists. And to that end, we've organized this town hall to bring people together to discuss, share, and learn from each other, to empathize with each other's experiences, and with the idea that connecting and talking will help bring more understanding and unity in our community and in our commonality of just being human beings. So I wanted to thank the many members of our anti-racist coalition for working collectively on this event, and offer a very special thank you to Dawn, who is our facilitator tonight. She is a Millbrae resident. She's also a professor at De Anza College. She's also a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist and a super mom extraordinaire. And she has spent a lot of time putting this together, and I really appreciate, and we all really appreciate that effort. So in addition, I wanted to make a special thank you to Tom Williams, our city manager, and all of the people who helped within the city. And we have city council members, especially Gina and Ann Schneider, who also helped in this effort. I want to thank MCTV and the many, many more members of our community that came together. But last but not least, I want to thank all of you participating in this discussion tonight. So I know we're joined by many members of our community, and I'm so happy to see that we already have 80 plus participants on this call. But I especially wanted to point out that we're joined by our superintendent, the Millbrae Board of Trustees. I see many members on this call, if not all, as well as many of our school representatives. I see a lot of principals and teachers also on this call, so thank you. I'm super proud to be a part of Millbrae and seeing the support from all of you. And it's nice to see that so many people care about each other. So thank you all in advance for participating in this event.
Thank you, Karen. And also thank you for mentioning that I am a part of the community as well. And so I too am so proud to be able to participate in this, and I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have. So there are a couple of different things to know about this conversation. In addition to my role as facilitator, you'll also notice in the participant list that there are other facilitators who are here with us. We will be doing breakout groups later on in this conversation, and your breakout groups will be, in each group will be a facilitator that'll help guide your conversation. So if you have any questions in the breakout rooms, your facilitators will be able to help you. Right. As I said earlier, I will be enabling and disabling the chat at different parts. So don't worry. I know that the chat is a important part of this conversation. So we will be able to engage in chat. I just got a quick message from Tom. I think Tom needs to say one more thing before we move forward. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Don, thank you. I just failed to mention, so everybody listening, that although we have city council members that are present and attending tonight's meeting, we are governed by the Brown Act, which is a state law that prohibits any elected official to participate in what would in essence be a quorum or policy making without us advertising the meeting as a council meeting. So your elected officials, your council members that are present, even though they can participate as citizens, they can really only listen as elected officials and council members. So I just wanted to point that to everyone that we're governed by state law here, and the elected officials need to be very careful of what is known as the Brown Act.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so now that we've got all these introductions out of the way, let's get to know who's in the room with us, right? Because if we're going to have some conversations, right, let's see who's in the room. There is a poll I'm going to launch, right? And there are several questions in the poll. The screen will pop up and you can use your mouse, or if you're on your device, you can just tap the screen to be able to participate in this poll. And because there's multiple questions, make sure you scroll down until you see the submit button, all right? So this is just a poll just to get to know everybody who's in this conversation right now. All the answers are anonymous, and in the end, I'll share some of the results. All right, great job, everybody. I see everybody voting, everybody putting in their answers. All right. Okay. All right, and here are our results. Okay, it looks like many of you, this is your first time engaging in this conversation. We have folks who did not attend the first town hall. That's absolutely okay. And then in the second question, we have 33% of you are over 21 years in terms of how long you've lived in Millbrae. And we have quite a number of folks who've lived here less than 10 years. The next question is about age. And then in terms of our gender pronouns. Okay, thank you so much for sharing your responses. Okay. Now in chat, I'd like to ask you to share, and this is a difficult question to capture in poll. I thought this would be a better question to do in chat, right? In terms of your ethnic identities, right? And everybody has different ethnic identities, different ways of articulating their ethnic identities, right? I'd like you, if you feel comfortable, right, to share your ethnic identities. Chat is now open, and if you can put your ethnic identities in chat, we'll be able to see your response. We have wonderful diversity here in Millbrae, and I'm already seeing wonderful answers in chat. So after you enter in your response, feel free to scroll to see what the responses are. Oftentimes, this question forces us to check particular boxes by asking it in an open-ended way. We get to choose how we name and identify our ethnic identities. Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in that. So another question that I wanted to ask everybody, right, is what are you hoping to discuss tonight? And so for this question, I'm going to do something a little bit interactive here, right? In chat, I'm going to put a website for you to go to. So if you're on your computer, you can enter this URL in, and there will be a code. I'm pasting that in right now for you. If you're on your device, right, let me do that again for you. And the code is right above the URL. So the URL we're going to, the website we're going to is www.menti.com. And the code is 7635160. So I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to enter all that information in before I share screen. And what this is a website where you can enter in your response to this question. All right, and what's cool about this is we begin to create a word cloud, right, where we can see everybody's responses. So again, the question is, what brings you to this conversation tonight? And if you're having trouble, you can go ahead and enter in your response in chat. Gina, who's one of our moderators, will help enter in your responses to make sure that your response is captured. And what's amazing about this is you're watching the aggregation of people's responses live. And we see how prominent the words learn, community, and anti-racism is. And again, if you'd like to, you can put your response in chat, and one of our facilitators, Gina, will enter in your response for you to make sure that your comment's captured. This is pretty cool, right? Okay, so at the end of the session, we'll have another opportunity to do another word cloud, right? And but looking at the words that we have here tonight, okay, we have community, we have learn, anti-racism, we have education, understanding, equality, social justice. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for participating in this. Okay. So let me ground us in some intentions here. Okay. So when ARC started working on this conversation, we really identified three clear intentions, right? First is to continue conversations that have already started, right? This is, for, as many of you heard what Tom said, right? That there was a town hall that got us thinking about how people experience racism and race differently. And so this space is another opportunity for us to be able to continue these conversations, right? Second, the intention for tonight is to expand our understanding of racism and anti-racism. Now, I know some of you are wondering what the word anti-racism means. And if you hold on one second, I'll provide a working definition for you. So again, the intention, the second one, is around expanding our understanding of racism and anti-racism. And third is to understand our own privilege and power to create solutions. So we'll be going through a series of discussion questions that you'll have an opportunity to talk to one another about in small group discussion. And these questions are designed to move us towards the eventual and the last question, which is around how do we want to create change together, okay? So these are our intentions. And so in order to have an authentic dialogue, right, and to build connections, to build a strong relationship with one another, right, I offer this to you, right? We need a sense of confident humility. And what that means for us is that we come into these conversations with self-awareness, we have our own wisdom and we have our own assets. And confident humility means that we will always have more to learn, right? I enter into every conversation like this. I've been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for over 16 years, and I still carry this notion of confident humility, and it's really enabled me to hear and to learn and have an open heart to people's experiences and thoughts. If we're able to do this, we can approach each challenge, including conflict and failures, with intentionality as an opportunity for creativity and change, right? When we get to that discussion, when we get to that last question around change, right? If we approach our conversations with confident humility, right, we'll be able to come up with creative and new ways together as a community, right, to think about solutions, to think about how each of us can contribute to change. So what does this practice look like, right? I invite you to think about how you're going to do these 5 things this evening. So first, speak your truth, right? It is important that when we're sharing our experiences, that when we're talking with each other, right, that we're sharing our own experiences and not speaking for another person. This is powerful because when we speak from a place of our own truth, right, you know, no one can question us and no one can change that truth that we're sharing, right? And we want to give everybody an opportunity to speak their truth as well. So second, right, I invite you to lean into discomfort, right, to lean into each other. Conversations about race and racism are going to be uncomfortable. There's no way around it, right? But the space that we're creating, I hope, will be a brave space where we take those feelings of discomfort and we practice that confident humility, and we trust each other a little bit when we're going into these conversations. So third, expect and accept non-closure. What it means is we're not going to solve all these problems tonight. The conversations that we have will probably not end tonight as well. And so non-closure means that we are okay with things that are messy, and we commit ourselves to continuing to have these conversations together. Connected to that is embracing paradox, right? That for some of us, right, we can be working through understanding our privilege and our power, and also begin to identify ways and maybe identify, you know what, maybe that one thing that I did, or I have some behaviors that are actually racist, right? And so we can work towards anti-racist practices, as well as identify ways in which we might be contributing to some issues. So we can embrace that paradox, right? And lean into that discomfort. And then last, seek intentionality, not perfection. So I really like this last one, because intentionality means that we have an opportunity to think about our actions and our words, to speak and to do with intention, and to not expect everything to be received perfectly, to unfold perfectly. This is how we lean into each other and lean into discomfort. So these 5 things, right, is what practicing confident humility will look like for us tonight. And I invite y'all to think a little bit about what that might mean for you, right? The facilitators tonight will remind you of these when you go into your breakout room discussions. Okay, so earlier I said I would provide a working definition of anti-racist. Okay, so we will come back to this, but I wanted to give this to you right now so that you can get your juices flowing, right? And know that we cannot arrive to this word without having some conversations and some understanding of some other foundational critical words. So anti-racist, to be very, very clear, does not mean non-racist, okay? And there's 2 quotes that I've put up here to help us understand what anti-racist is. So first, the beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. Remember what I said earlier about paradox, right? So you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be anti-racist. Anti-racism is a commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including yourself. So Ijeoma Uluo, who is the author of So You Want to Talk About Race, writes about, how do we think about anti-racism? How do we do and how do we think about it, and how we can embrace our own imperfections. So the second is from Ibram X. Kendi, who's the author of How to Be Anti-Racist. I know many of you have read this book. And this quote, I think, helps us also identify and understand what anti-racist is. The only way to undo racism is to consistently identify it and describe it and then dismantle it. So our conversation tonight, right, is an attempt to identify, describe, and dismantle, right? We'll be working towards understanding of what anti-racist is more. But first, I'd like us to explore and create language with these foundational words, okay? So we're gonna transition in the breakout sessions. I'm gonna give you some definitions of foundational words and then invite you to think about our discussion questions, okay? So there's 2 foundational words for our first question. So first, right, unconscious or implicit bias, right? So there's a way of thinking about this in which we understand that bias is a simple preference for or against a certain thing, a person, or group, right? And bias is the result of cognitive shortcuts that our brain has developed over time because our brain is trying to handle being bombarded with information. And I have to be very, very clear about this. Bias is neither good or bad in itself, and everyone has them. I can have a bias for grapes. That's neither good nor bad. Okay, you could have a bias for the color yellow. That's neither good nor bad, right? But this is where we get in trouble. When we think of unconscious or implicit bias, right? These cognitive shortcuts that have developed over time, right? They are constantly being reinforced in our brain, right? And these cognitive shortcuts impact others when we are unaware of them and we make decisions, okay? So this is where implicit bias begins to get us in trouble. When we are unaware of our biases, right? Then when we make decisions, they can steer us in the wrong direction. The second word I want to introduce to you is this really complex word called microaggressions, okay? These are everyday verbal, nonverbal, environmental slights, snubs, or insults. And they can be intentional or unintentional, right? And these messages communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to people based solely on their marginalized group membership, right? And Daryl Wing Su, who's the author of Microaggressions in Everyday Life, further explains, in many of these cases, right, hidden messages tend to and may invalidate the group identity or the experiential reality or experience, right, of these people. They demean them on a personal or group level, and they communicate that they are lesser human beings, and they suggest that they do not belong with a majority group, that they threaten or intimidate them, or they relegate them to an inferior status or treatment, okay? So these are 2 really important words as we go into our first question. Okay, here's our first question. So we all have been racist or have experienced racism. What microaggressions, unconscious or implicit biases have you either participated in or experienced? Right, so again, accepting that we have all been racist or experienced racism, what microaggressions, unconscious or implicit biases have you either participated in or experienced? Okay, so I'm going to let you think about that. And as we transition into our breakout rooms, right, your facilitators will also go in, okay, and they will help you determine some key points to bring up, right? In each of your rooms, you will have an opportunity to designate a note taker, right? And I'm going to put the link for the Google Doc for your note taker to take notes right now. Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn on chat and put that in for you. Okay, and this document will enable you to see what the other groups are talking about as well. Okay, so if I could have all the facilitators hang back, right, I'm going to put everybody into breakout rooms. So what you will see is, hold on one second. All right, I'm going to hold on one second. Okay, there it is. I'm going to create breakout rooms of 8 rooms, 10 to 11 participants per room, right? And in that room, you'll have 15 minutes to talk about this question, okay? And if you decide that you just want to hang back and listen, it's absolutely okay to do that, all right? Our facilitator will help you. You know, just make sure that if you do want to participate, right, there'll be different ways and the facilitators will help you figure that out. Okay. I'm going to create the breakout rooms now. You'll see an invitation to join. Please accept that invitation. If you miss that invitation, in the 3 dots in your toolbar, you'll see breakout rooms and you can click that and your invitation will appear again. All right. So I'm going to open all rooms now. If you're having trouble getting into your breakout rooms, you can hang back and I'll give you help. I'll give you some help. And I'm going to put the discussion question into the Google Doc so you can see it in case you forget it. All right. Okay, facilitators. All right, I'm going to move you into groups now. Okay.
Hi, Dawn, it's Michael. I just wanted to point out, I'm showing as a facilitator, but I have to leave shortly.
That's okay.
Have somebody else, if you had me for a room, please give that to someone else.
That's okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm moving everybody into groups right now. Group 4.
Ignore the other one that we originally invited to?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Go ahead and accept it. Go ahead, Jean, go ahead and accept yours. 1, 2. I'm just trying to make sure we're all distributed here.
Do you want me in breakout room 8? That's what I was invited to, but I don't know if you have somebody else there.
Well, let's see. Nope. Go over to breakout room. So Katie,
Yep.
Go ahead and accept yours. I'm gonna put Steve, Hom, go ahead and go to breakout room. I'm going to put you in breakout room 2, Steve.
I see breakout room 1 as a select. Ah, there it is. Join breakout room 2.
Yes. Okay. Lillian, I'm going to put you in breakout room 1. Actually, you're already in breakout room 1, so go ahead and accept that.
Okay, yeah, I see it. I'll accept it.
All right. Who else do we need here? Michael. I'm gonna move you over to breakout room 3. Hold on, Michael.
But not as a facilitator, right?
As a facilitator? Aren't you a facilitator?
Well, I was going to help with the chat. I didn't sign up to do facilitating.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, you can just go in as a participant then.
Yes, great.
That's absolutely fine. Okay, Celeste, I'm gonna move you to 3. Okay, Joy, go ahead and accept yours for 5. Joy, go ahead and accept yours for 5. Do you see it, Joy?
Looks like she might be first.
Okay, yeah, there she is. All right. And Michael, you can go ahead and accept yours and join room 3 if you'd like.
Yeah, it's not populating. Where did you say I can find that?
So click the 3 dots in your toolbar. You'll see that again. And then Steve Henderson.
Mhm.
All right, I see you in, let's see, you're in room 8, is that right?
That's what it says, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna move you to 7.
Okay.
Okay, Karen, go ahead and accept 8.
Okay.
Karen Chin, go ahead and accept 8. Okay, Joy, Katie, Gina, Celeste, Steve, and Lillian. Great. Okay, so the folks who are still here, Alice and Kay Macaulay, can I help you get to your room? All right. All right, for folks who are watching us, thank you for joining us this evening. Right. We just transitioned everybody over to breakout rooms. And okay, and the question they are talking about is, we have all been racist or experienced racism. What microaggressions, unconscious or implicit biases have you either participated in or experienced? Okay. Hi, Bob.
Hello, my internet connection became unstable and I got booted. I'm like, oh no, this is what our kids are going through.
That's okay. What room were you in?
I was in room number 1.
Okay, let me put you back in room number 1 then.
Thank you.
Okay, here you go. Hello, viewers. Some of what you're seeing right here, this is live, and these are the notes that are being taken in the breakout groups right now. So again, the question that they're addressing is, we have all been racist or experienced racism. What microaggressions, unconscious or implicit biases have you either participated in or experienced? You'll notice in this group collaboration that all the groups will be able to see what the other groups are talking about as well. And the notes reflected in the discussions will be shared with each of the groups later on. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We have a few groups who are wrapping up their thoughts right now. And while you're waiting, you can take a look at what was shared in the Google Doc. Welcome back. There's about 10 more seconds until all the groups close, so feel free to look at the notes from breakouts in question 1. Welcome back, everybody. All right, so I know that wasn't enough time, right? I know that you all were just getting into good discussion, right? So what I'd like you to do is the reporter that you all chose for your group, I'd like that person to put into chat, what is the one thing that you want to share back with everybody, the one thing that you all talked about, the one most important thing. And go ahead and take a minute to type that in chat right now. Okay. We have some new people joining us. Thank you for joining us. We just came back from breakout rooms where everybody talked about their first question, which is, what microaggressions, unconscious or implicit biases have you either participated in or experienced? And we're waiting for each group's reporters right now to put the one thing that they want to share into chat. Thank you, Danny, for being our first commenter. Right, Danny's sharing in his group, generalizations and assumptions from people in roles of authority can be very hurtful, and learning each individual story is critical to combating hurtful assumptions. But we need to get to a place where it is safe to share who we are, right? Oh, it's actually Dana, okay? Great. Thank you, Dana, for sharing that. Other groups, I invite you to put in your thoughts. Pamela, for her group, said, every participant has witnessed or been the target of microaggressions or implicit bias, and every participant cares about how we can do better as a community to address these microaggressions. Thank you, Pamela. Joe writes, in our group, we discussed a bias that some have and some have experienced, and this bias is those with accents are less intelligent. And in Serena's group, Serena shared, microaggressions are experienced as early as elementary school age up to adulthood. Also, learning how to see our children's experience as they might not match our own and validating them. Okay. In Carla's group, the discussion seemed to focus on intent versus impact. Thank you so much. Right. Carla, can I invite you to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit more about intent versus impact as it was discussed in your group?
Hi. So in our group, most of our stories, the universal common factor was intent versus impact. Mm-hmm. And some of us were the microaggressors and some of us experienced microaggression. And I think the intent wasn't a bad one, but then later on they realized, oh, it made that person uncomfortable. Oh, that was racist. And so just checking ourselves and realizing that it does make an impact, even if it's a good intention.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Right. How much of intent and impact, right, understanding both of those is so important in thinking about how we have both experienced racism as well as contributed to microaggressions, to racism, right? That perhaps we didn't intend to do that or sound like that, but that was the impact that we had, right? So Caitlin, in Caitlin's group, Caitlin says, we had really good discussions about what our own past histories and with implicit biases or racist remarks. Stories were shared about how they were either the target of those actions or the role they played in it. A deeper understanding was formed about other people's perspectives during childhood and even developing in our community today. And Allison shares the general consensus is that a lot in the group understand and recognize that they have their own implicit biases, even if they themselves have been targeted by other people's biases. It's a work in progress. Yes, and remember the definition of biases is really we all have them, right? It's about being more self-aware so that when we act upon those biases, right, they don't harm, they don't hurt, or at a very extreme situation, right, hurt people. Okay? In Jean's group, right, Jean says, I am so moved by the confident humility and courage expressed in our group. This might be Jean sharing. Thank you, Jean. It is not easy to admit your implicit biases, but self-awareness is such an important step towards becoming anti-racist. All right. So this gives us a good, I think, working definition of how both microaggressions and implicit biases might show up for us, both as people who have perpetrated these things and also for people who have been targets or on the receiving end of these experiences, okay? So let's go to our next question, all right? But before we do that, right, let me offer a definition. Okay, so let me screen share and we will go to our next definition. Now this word, right, often makes people feel uncomfortable, right? I just want to acknowledge that, right? But remember, right, we are leaning into our discomfort, right? This is a space where we can be uncomfortable. We can talk about this. Okay, so privilege, right? These are unearned benefits that accrue to particular groups based on their location within a social hierarchy. Those who have privilege are often unaware and invisible to those who have it. Peggy McIntosh writes in White Privilege and Male Privilege, and if you haven't read Peggy McIntosh's work around the invisible knapsack, right? Privilege confers power. I want to say that again, privilege confers power. That gives license to some people to be, at best, thoughtless, and at worst, murderous. It is a sense of entitlement and conferred dominance that one did not have to earn, right? And we all have our privileges. We all have our privileges. So in this next question, I'd like you to consider this. Understanding your position in terms of power and privilege, what type of privileges do you have? Everyone has individual power. What power do you have? So this question is really an opportunity for you to reflect on the types of privileges and the type of power you have. All right. So again, what type of privileges, what type of power do you have? Okay. So the Google Doc for the second question is, I'm going to put that in the chat for your note takers. Right now, you all will go back into the same groups right here. Okay, that's right there for you. So note takers, that's your link. I'm going to reopen the rooms again. Facilitators, you can go straight back into the same rooms. And if anybody needs help, don't hesitate to ask. Again, you're going to have 15 minutes. Here we go. right, and if you missed the invitation, you can click the 3 dots in your toolbar. You can open up breakout room and your invitation should be right there for you. And if you're needing a little bit of help, right, you can unmute yourself and I can help you. Again, you can find your invitation by clicking the 3 dots in your toolbar and clicking breakout room, and your invitation should appear again. Okay, it looks like some of you, Phyllis, it looks like you don't have an invitation because you're unassigned. So let me put you into a room. You might have just gotten bumped out. I'm gonna put you, what room were you
Sorry,
in?
I was in with Carla and, oh shoot, I don't remember. I think it was group.
Group 4, Carla, Karen, and Ethel. Was Gina your facilitator?
Yes.
Okay, let me put you back in group 4.
I got knocked out before, so I had to come back into Zoom again. So that's probably what happened.
All right, no problem. Okay, here's your invitation.
Thank you, Dawn.
Okay, Lou. All right, I have you unassigned as well. Lou, do you remember what group you were in? I got Lou, and then Linda.
Sorry, I forgot. I just joined in.
Oh, did you just come in?
I just want.
Okay.
I just come in. I just want to know what's happening here.
Okay.
And just want to know people.
I'm gonna put you in room 5, and your facilitator will help you. Okay. There you go. And then Linda, I know you just joined us as well. Linda, I'm going to put you in room 4. There you go. All right, Linda, thank you. Okay, I see. Do you need help getting to your room? You're in room 5. If you're missing that invitation, there are 3 dots in the toolbar. You can click those 3 dots and your invitation will be under breakout room.
Okay. All right. I'll try again. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dawn, I don't see it. That's the first time I will see it. I don't. I open up the 3 dots, but I don't see.
And do you click breakout? Do you click
No,
breakout room?
No, I don't see that. There's no breakup. No, not like last time. It just showed up, but not here.
Okay. Let me put you. Is it okay if I move you into a different breakout room?
Yeah, that's okay. As a matter of fact, I would have another conference call.
Okay.
So I may as well just leave now because I did not anticipate it's more than an hour. So I have a conference call right now.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us. And
it's my pleasure.
I hope that you continue having these conversations. All right. We'll see you soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Don.
Bye-bye. All right, viewers. Looks like we got everybody to where they needed to go. And everyone's in breakout room right now. And they're talking about the second question, which is understanding your position in terms of power and privilege. What type of privileges do you have? Everyone has individual power. What power do you have? Okay. So I invite you to think about this question as well. And again, the first question asked us to think about what types of microaggressions, unconscious implicit biases have we participated in or experienced? And the second question asks us to think about power and privilege. Hi, Wayne, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Everybody just went into breakout rooms, so I'm going to put you in there and the facilitator will help you figure out what's going on, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for joining us. I'm gonna put you in breakout room 5.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's see what's going on in each of these breakout rooms. And we're gonna check out their notes now. These are the notes for question 2.
Hi, Don. Sorry, I
Hi.
kicked out. My internet totally crashed. I was in group 1.
Okay, let me put you back into group 1.
Sorry.
It's okay. We've had a couple of people like that. So let me put you back in.
Thank you.
Here we go. All right, viewers, I just closed the groups and our participants are returning back. Welcome back, everybody. Right. While you're settling back in, you can take a look at some of the notes from the other groups that you both participated in, but then also the notes that they took. Such wonderful discussion. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm just scrolling through the notes from the Google Doc, as you can take a look. Okay, welcome back, everybody. All right. So reporters from every group, I'm going to ask you to share that one thing again. Let me open up the chat. All right, that one thing again. And while we're waiting for everybody to chat, everyone can just take a look at the different notes. All right, let's go back up to the first group so we can scroll through those and see what came up. Okay, group 1 still going, group 2 still going. All right. All right, so I got some comments in chat. Okay. All right, looks like there's some very interesting discussion here. Steve Hom is appreciating the discussion and getting to know more neighbors. I am as well. Gina asks, why is it okay for people with dark skin to always expect that someone in Nordstrom will follow them? Okay. And I got a question from Anne about notes being available afterwards, right? I will leave that to ARC to share out the links to the notes. We'll have to review them. If there's anything overly specific in these notes for privacy, we won't be sharing them, but I'll leave it up to the ARC organizers to decide what to do with the notes. Thank you for that question, Anne. So Dana says, and I'm assuming it's Dana, not Danny, Dana says, critically evaluating policy and how policies promote systemic racism and talking to local electeds is critical to bring about sustainable change that benefits everyone and pushes an equity agenda. Frankie writes, power to right the wrongs. Joe writes, many in our group felt extreme privilege simply because we were fortunate enough to grow up in an area where we received an excellent education. It's access to resources, right? That's a great connection. Kathy is appreciating the excellent dialogue in our group, very thoughtful, right? Allison writes, we had a really good discussion about the privileges that we do and don't have, and talked about how we want to use our privilege to help those who are more marginalized than us. Pamela writes in her group, where we live is a privilege. Knowing the English language is a privilege. We can use our respective positions of power to advocate for people of color and create equitable practices. All right, so I want to go back to, let's see. So Dana, what you shared back from your group, would you mind unmuting a little and sharing a little bit more about that conversation that happened?
So, sorry, I'm going to keep my screen off because I've already been kicked out. And so you guys will just have the voice.
Yes, we understand.
So at the very tail end of our conversation, one of our members raised a great question about, yes, if someone has privilege, what do you do with that privilege? And part of the conversation went to, well, there's volunteerism and there's scholarships and, you know, there's some pieces, but then there was also, it shifted into the systemic racism, the policies and practices that promote and hold certain populations down. And so part of that, you know, some of it was talking about exercise your right to vote. And I serve as a school board member in a community outside of Millbrae. And I would argue that it's more than just voting. Voting is critical. However, if we truly want to bring about sustainable change, it really does mean looking at things like homework policies, discipline policies, because we can look throughout this country and we can find the same trends. Certain populations are suspended more than others. Certain populations are referred to special education more than others. Certain populations go to college more than others. That has a lot to do with policies that begin all the way down in preschool. So until we question those and really start looking at that as a community and look at how do we promote an equity agenda, we will continue to have the same results.
Dana, thank you for sharing that perspective and summarizing so wonderfully that conversation that you all had. Education and education policies, right, is a clear area where we can have more discussions. Serena writes in chat, lots of discussion on how in the Bay Area we hold a lot of privilege. For parents, how do we raise our children knowing their economic status, how they are seen racially, and making sure that they are anti-racist, knowing that we cannot raise them to be colorblind. We need to help them celebrate this diversity while understanding their privilege. Parents have power to raise their children to be anti-racist. And Caitlin writes that we all recognized each other's privilege in society and how things such as education, living in the Bay Area, and our race can have an impact. We learned that things that seem so normal to us in everyday life actually brought and brings immense privilege. We dug deeper on personal experiences in our past, as well as how to use our power to speak out in the future and how to use our voices for the better. I love this because this is a great, great way to segue into our third and our final question, right? Do you remember way back, one of the earlier slides that I showed you was about this word anti-racist. And if you remember, right, anti-racist, that word, right, also asks us to think about what are we doing to call out racism? Okay, so let me go back to that slide right here. And all right, so again, right, you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be anti-racist, right? Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including yourself. And what this looks like, right, is that we constantly identify it and describe it and then dismantle it, right? So the third question, I'm going to keep us all in the main room together because this is an opportunity, right, to bring all of our perspectives and all of our ideas, all of our creative thoughts together in terms of change. So the third question for all of us to consider, right, and I've left the chat open, right, is where do you want to see change and how can you use your power to create solutions? Just in the previous comments that I read out, we've heard so many wonderful ideas that are beginning to come up, right? We've heard Dana talk about looking at our educational policies, right? Coming down to even the decisions on how we deal with student issues, right? We have comments about just being more aware of the privileges that we have in our community, having access to good education, right? Caitlin also talked about personal experiences, right? And how we can use our power and our privilege to speak out in the future. So there's individual ideas to create change. So I invite you now to put ideas in chat. And if there's any ideas that people want to share in terms of this question, right? You can unmute yourself or you can raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. All right, I'm going to give everybody to think about this really, really huge question for a second. I think I hear someone unmuted. Lynn?
That was me, Dawn. Yeah.
Go
Hi.
ahead, Lynn.
Thank you, Dawn, for doing this. You're doing a fabulous job. Just saying.
Thank you.
Well, I have had the opportunity to bring some change to our equity piece in Millbrae through my participation on the Millbrae School Board. And I want to, call out my colleagues on the Millbrae School Board who have worked so hard to make sure that we seek to educate all children in all ways and make sure that they all have, no matter what school you go to, where you live, what your race is, the opportunity is there for all. And that has been such a huge privilege that I didn't see happening early on in my career. And so having to have this time now to really be a proponent of that has warmed my heart tremendously. And like I say, I want to thank all the other board members because they are just crucial to what's happening in the schools now. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for sharing that. In chat, we have some wonderful ideas that are coming in. Gina is one of our facilitators to stand up for others, whether in person or on social media. And Wayne supports that, right? Gina also adds, and this is something I think that we take for granted, right? And sometimes we don't even think about this. So make a point of saying hello to strangers on Millbrae streets, even if you think they won't respond, right? Just that mere act of acknowledging another person, right, can open doors to greater conversation, right, which might lead to greater change, right? Maria says we need to work on systemic racism in our school and in policing, in particular the sheriff's department. Right? There's wonderful and I think very timely conversations that are happening now on police reform, right? And I know that this makes people really, really uncomfortable because there seems to be a line that you have to draw between whether or not you support law enforcement or not. But no, I would challenge everybody to think about this in terms of our community, right? How do we support some sustainable, some anti-racist practices around policing, as well as making sure that our communities are safe, right? We can have these conversations together, okay? Celeste writes, speaking out for myself and other people of color and demand equity and opportunity and education for individuals of all diverse groups. Celeste, I want to invite you to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit more about this, because in what you just wrote there, right, there's a couple things about self-advocacy, being able to speak out for yourself, and then also advocating for others. Do you want to share additional thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I know growing up, my parents taught me that everybody's equal, so I never thought of myself as different until people would make comments about my skin color, my hair, things like that. And I didn't learn to speak out for myself and say that's not okay to say. Microaggressions are not okay to tell people until I was mid-high school. So I think speaking out for myself and telling people you can't be telling me that, or I have a friend who wears a hijab. Oh, you can't make, or telling people who would make fun of her, you can't make fun of her like that because that's part of her religion. So I think speaking out for other people like that, even if it's smaller scale, saying not to say the N-word, that's something super simple that I think can push to make the change that I described in my comment.
Right. Thank you so much, because those are two really personal but great examples that each of us can take into, our own lives, right? How do we advocate for ourselves and also advocate for others? So Jamie writes, we have to intentionally put underrepresented people in positions of power so that they can be role models for the next generation as aspirational leaders. Until we diversify at the top, the policies that continue anti-racist behaviors will perpetuate. And what I read in Jamie's comments, right, is that we need to get behind people who can also support anti-racist decision-making and being able to provide leadership to continue these conversations on anti-racist practices at a broader level, right? Wayne writes, learn about other races, sexes, and ethnicities, right? I'm really excited that at the state level, right, Assembly bill just passed to require ethnic studies in many of our higher in UCs and CSUs, right? And also in many of our, in many of the towns and the counties, right? We're beginning to talk about ethnic studies at the local level, right? So this is one way in which the state is beginning to challenge us to think about how we continue to learn about races, other sexes and other ethnicities, and how we can integrate that into our children's educational experiences. Steve Henderson writes, recruiting qualified people of color to fill professional positions will help to close the income inequality gap between people of color and white people. Katie writes, support diversity in my profession by demanding more diverse teams and supporting folks to grow into those roles. I love this, Katie, because what Katie's just saying is that, hey, you know, this anti-racist work that we're doing doesn't only have to happen in our own home, in our own backyards, but we should also be looking for opportunities to create change at our workplace, right? And so, Katie, do you want to share a little bit more about what you shared in chat? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure. So I'm a lawyer at Genentech, and we have a pretty diverse workforce, but often our outside counsel is pretty white and pretty male. And so I started this a couple of years ago on important cases, telling the lead partner, look, we know these cases are great cases to have, and they're cases that make careers. So you need to give us your best women and people of color to staff this case so that they get the opportunity they need to get partnership. And the company, we're also members of like the Minority Council Coalition. And I'm personally trying to reach out to the recruiters and ask them, look, how can I help you in recruiting? What do we need to do in the department? What do we need to do externally so that we are viewed as a good place for people who are not white to come work? And so I would encourage everyone to just think of the little things. It could be, as a bunch of people have said in chat, right? Say hi to people that you don't know. I mean, granted, I guess we're not all in the office, so nobody sees anybody in the hallway, but that goes a long way to helping people feel supported when they may not look like everybody there for whatever reason, be it race, gender, ethnicity, religion, whatever.
Thank you so much, Katie. And subtle impact, implicit bias and microaggressions go unchecked. It is about small actions and efforts that add up to meaningful change. And Joy shares, I want to make sure we were looking at this from a local lens, that is being inclusive of Latinx, Muslim, and bi-multiracial children. Within my leadership position, I will continue these discussions in the Millbrae School District and our two sister high schools, Mills and Cappuccino. Yes, and Joy brings up a really important part, right? So earlier, when I asked you all to share your ethnic identities, we have to remember, right, that for many of us, it's not as simple as checking one box, right? So one of the ways that we can help create change is how do we expand our identity? How do we expand our understanding of how people can identify in different ways, right? And Joy's comment reminds us that there are many mixed race, multiracial individuals and our children as well who live in our communities, and how do we create space for those identities to exist? Okay. Maureen writes, I want to see change in our ability to talk to each other about these hard issues. When I've tried to point out bias in conversations among friends and colleagues in the past, I am cut off quickly. I wish I knew better how to talk to people about hard topics. I feel poorly equipped. Thank you so much for saying that, Maureen, because even though we're in the space, right, and we're trying really hard to work through the discomfort, and hopefully you've been able to have this discussion, what happens after we leave the space? How do we continue having these discussions with people we love, sometimes people in our own family, right? And that's all, that's also part of the second question in thinking about our power and our privilege, right? What is our power and what is our privilege in terms of our relationships with others? Right? And how can we pick and choose and bring people in a loving way to talk to them about these difficult things, right? And these conversations take time. And we've only spent, not even 2 hours, and it's taken so much effort just to be able to scratch the surface, right? So we have to remind ourselves, and we have to support one another, that these conversations are going to take a lot of time and a lot of hope and a lot of strength, but we can do that together. All right. Wonderful comments in the chat. There's so many wonderful things. I'm so excited to see all of these comments in chat. I want to give you all an opportunity to unmute yourself and step in and share. So if anybody wants to unmute themselves to talk about the kind of change that you want to see and how can you use your power to create solutions, I invite you to do that now.
Hi, everybody. I'm a teacher here at Mills High School. And I do want to give an idea. So Ibram Kendi, he always talks about, it's not always the hearts and minds, but it's about policies. So I'm part of a group of teachers where we're trying to form a coalition and get different students and family members and parents that are interested in issues of supporting our BIPOC, our Black and Indigenous staff and students, and looking at our hiring practices. So if you're interested in that, you can email me. So we do have some teachers in our district, but we want to have like a more representative group. So it's a really great group. So I put my email, I'll give you my personal one in the chat. So please join. And another thing on the ballot, there's going to be a really awesome member who's going for our school board. Her name is Lydia. I'm going to put her website in there. You're going to check her out. She'll be on your local ballot, and she'll be an excellent addition to helping our school board look for, represent our BIPOC and also people with disabilities. So she's a great local advocate that I think is a great candidate.
Yeah, thank you, Serena. Because what I heard right there are multiple levels of ways that you're engaging change, right? You're getting together with other people to create capacity, to build a group of people who can work to get your resources together, to get your energies together, to work towards creating change within your sphere. And then you're backing other people, supporting other candidates to come into leadership positions who can help create broader change. Thank you so much for sharing that. Other folks, feel free to unmute yourself right now.
Hey, Don. Go ahead, Earl. I'll go just next.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to change, not only in Millbrae, not only in California, but the entire United States.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell from this discussion, I think many of us are immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself. All my kids were born in another country and we all moved here. What I'd like to change in this country, and maybe this will be the start of equality for all races. Do you know that up to now, only natural born Americans can become president? And I think it's time that law is changed or amended. And I think when that happens, there will be a lot of, like a domino effect, a lot of changes will happen as well. That's all.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, right? Because I think your comment really, in a moment where in less than 2 months, we're going to be voting, right, for the leader, right, of our country, right? And it asks us to think about, who gets access to these positions, right? And that people who have been shut out of these leadership positions, right? As a society, we have the ability to also ask those questions and be critical about who gets to participate and who doesn't. So I thank you for that. There was a second person. Go
Yes,
ahead and
Wayne.
unmute.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, there's a caucus of elective Asians, and it's the only diversity caucus of elected officials in San Mateo County. And they are partnering with the NAACP education, Maurice Goodwin, who's also a trustee at the San Mateo County College Board. And we're looking for topics or of interest to help educate and talk about diversity, and particularly, like Maureen said, how to address difficult discussions. So we're looking for your what you would like to hear or you like to talk about in a classroom or education setting. So if you're interested, if you have some ideas, please email us at smcapicaucus@gmail.com. And I posted that on the chat. So thank you.
Thank you, Wayne, for sharing that. Another opportunity. All right, I'll take one more comment before we start to wrap up. Is there anybody else that wants to share a thought about creating change?
Can I ask a question? I feel really awkward because I'm not sure this is even based on an accurate reality, but I have a question, and I'm wondering if maybe folks can answer it. I'm wondering if Mills High School is representative of our community, because to me, I've heard things, and I don't really have the facts. I don't know if this is accurate, but I have the sense that because of the way that you can choose which high school you go to, that Mills has sort of become the Asian school and Burlingame has been the white school. And I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, then it troubles me, because I would like to see the high school be more representative of the whole community. So I don't know if what I'm saying is even true, but it's something that I'm wondering about.
Well, thank you, Joe, for that question. And if we are to connect it to this last question about where do you want to see change, right? What I'm hearing in your question, right, is this broader question about how representative or how inclusive, actually, right, is our communities in terms of both not only serving our students, but also how do our students access our educational institutions, right? And from there, right, I think, it's this broader issue about educational access, right? Do we have, what policies do we have in place to be able to ensure access and to be able to support all of our students in our communities? So thank you, Joe, for that comment. Now, let me move towards wrapping up, because there are a few things, right, that I want to bring us back to, right? So I love that Serena referenced Kendi. This is another quote from Kendi in a different piece of writing that he published earlier this year, right? And this is what I want to leave you with, right? He writes, but there is no neutrality in the racism struggle. One either allows racial inequities to persevere as a racist or confronts racial inequities as an anti-racist. There is no between safe space of non-racist. The claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism, right? So Kendi clearly calls us to this question of how do we, refer to ourselves, and how do we occupy the space of the struggle against racism? Because there's no such thing as neutrality. We make choices every day, both small, both large, in our own privileges and powers, right? And he asks us, and he says that you can't be neutral. You cannot be neutral, right? So we've had some wonderful discussion, this, almost 2 hours now, right? Now I'd like you to think about what next steps you can take. What is one thing you feel ready to do now, okay? And as you're thinking about that, I promised I would go back into our wonderful word cloud, okay? What is one thing that you are ready to do now? So I'm gonna have you enter the menti.com URL again that I'll paste into chat for you. Okay, you can grab it. And let me open up my chat. Okay, and here it is again for everybody. Okay, again, menti.com, the code is right there for you. Okay, and the question, let me bring it up so you could see. All right, let's go back to this question. Sorry, I lost the window. Okay. All right. Let me share screen. Oh, I'm sorry. Too many windows open. Hold on 1 second. Okay. And I think I gave you the wrong code. So let me go back to the first code. Okay, and I will put that back into chat for everybody. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, try that again.
It's the same code.
Okay, there should be a second. Okay, you know what? I don't have the second code, so this is where we need to improvise. So let's answer the question in chat then, all right? Let me put the question back up. All right, and again, let's think about what is one thing you feel ready to do now. And I invite you to put your thoughts into chat. Let me open up chat. Okay, go ahead. What is one thing you feel like you're ready to do now? So we've heard some wonderful suggestions this, the past 10 minutes when we're talking about change, personal, in our communities, our families, our educational institutions, leadership. We heard about hiring in our workplace. We talk about everyday things that we can do, right? So what is one thing you feel ready to do now? Okay. All right, I love this. Someone private messaged me something very powerful, right? And they said, listen. Okay. I appreciate everybody that's talking about speaking up, saying something, advocating. I love this, challenging others, right? I love this. Karen says, be still and be aware, right? Rebecca writes, conversations with people I usually don't talk about race with, right? Speak up more, create safe spaces, self-reflection, have conversations about inequity. Allison, thank you so much. Use my privilege to help someone less privileged than me. Steve, feel better equipped to talk with my family about being anti-racist. Good for you, yes, right? Steve Henderson writes, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Reach out to others who are different than me, Karen writes. Engage in courageous conversations, writes Peter, thank you. Right, Phyllis writes, I am more inclined to speak up as a Black woman, recognizing how uncomfortable my comments may make others. Yes, and how we need to listen, right? When folks of color, especially Black folks, speak, okay? This is how we support one another, right? Pamela writes, continue engaging conversations with our community on racism and privilege. Right, Gina writes, get more comfortable with asking questions when I'm truly curious about hard issues. Right, so this is just for many of us, right, the starting point, or maybe we're continuing to be on this journey of working on creating change and how to be anti-racist with one another, and how to be anti-racist more in our lives and our community. And remember, one of the things that we started out with in terms of our, my call to you is that, you know, to feel okay with non-closure, right? Because it's an ongoing thing, you know, that we commit to, right? So I have a couple of last acknowledgements to make. I want to bring up our ARC folks. Whoops, our ARC folks. And first, I want Amy, if you can unmute yourself to talk a little bit about an upcoming event, and then Celeste will tell us a little bit about ARC. Okay, and then we'll close up because we are at 9 o'clock. So Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be brief in the chat with what you wanted to do next. I think that getting to know those of us who have been active with your startup activist group here in Millbrae ARC, the Anti-Racist Coalition, is one step. We are having a peaceful protest march. If you didn't see the first one in June, this is an opportunity to wear a mask, socially distanced, express yourself through art with a sign you carry, walk and chant with us, and then exchange stories of your life experience. By now, I think you're warmed up to do that. ARC is also, we've sponsored chalk out events. We have a book group. Two of the authors you heard about today are books that we've actually read and are finishing our discussion, and we're about to kick off a new book. So please come join us, and I'll turn it over to Celeste to tell you a little bit about how.
All right, Celeste, go ahead.
So as Amy mentioned, we have a book club. And so with ARC, Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition, your commitment level can be whatever you want it to be. If you maybe just want announcements on our events, on what you can possibly go to, that's okay. If you want to join the book club, that's also okay. And maybe you have kids who want to join as well. We do have youth in the group that can help with the discussion on the youth end. So feel free to engage family members and youth as well. So you guys can email millbraearc@gmail.com to join which mailing lists you want, and we'll send an email back. We also have a Facebook group as well with a similar name, but it's the full Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition. So you're welcome to look at that as well. Thank you guys for all coming, and I'll give it back to Dawn.
All right, and the email is in the chat, and also thank you, Jean, for putting the link to the Facebook group in there for us. I just want to say thank you so much for being with us for the past 2 hours. I want to name that you engaged in talking about anti-racism for 2 whole hours, all right? If you can do it for 2 hours, right, you can continue to do this with anybody else, with anybody here that you, that you talked with in your groups. I hope that you feel empowered. I hope that you feel hopeful, right? And I hope that you also feel full of resources and full of ideas on how to create change, and not only in your life, but in your workplace, in our communities. And also you've identified something that you know you can do immediately. All right. I want to thank the Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition for creating this opportunity for all of us to come together, right? I look forward to seeing you all out there, and I especially look forward to seeing more of you say hi to one another. And if you recognize me behind my mask, don't hesitate to say hi to me too. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And join us on the Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition Facebook group and send an email to stay connected with Millbrae ARC. Take care, everybody. Be well.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful conversation, everybody.
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Don. Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
Nice meeting
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, Don.
Good
Bye, everyone.
More to come.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.